Welcome back, everybody. I'm Steve Kaplowitz and joined today by the Director of Racetrack Operations. He is Dustin Dix as we put a wrap on the live meet for this season. And Dustin, good to have you back. And man, it seems like we were talking about the start of the season. And now here we are. We're already into April and the live racing season at Sunland Park has come to a close.
I don't know if it's just we're getting older or what, but it seems like these racing seasons just come and go quicker and quicker and quicker. That 55 days of racing seems like it just, like you said, Cappy, just like we just started yesterday.
It really is the case. And, you just had your last race day on Sunday, wrapping up what I know has been a pretty successful meet for you and for the track. And I guess if there was a chance to really kind of sum things up, Todd Fincher had a meet for the ages, didn't he?
Yeah, Todd, he won our trainer title. He had 35 wins on the thoroughbred side, and the next closest was Flacco Capalucci at 26. And Todd just seemed to dominate our stakes races as well. He won our Sunland Oaks, won a numerous number of other stakes races, and what a great season he had, over 1.8 million in purses that he won. So very successful for Todd. And Todd's been branching out, Cappy, the last few years. He's had some success in other locations. So this was expected. He's getting some really good owners, some high-end owners. And it was great to see his performance of Flying Connections in the Sunland Park Oaks. And I know that horse is heading to Kentucky for the Kentucky Oaks.
That's terrific. And for a chance for Todd to try and win the Kentucky Oaks, that is something he has not been able to do thus far, correct?
Correct. And he was able to run in the Breeders' Cup last year. He had a couple of horses run in the Breeders' Cup. They didn't run as well as he was hoping, but he's been knocking on the door nationally, and I think his time is coming. And for those that were here on Sunland Derby Day, Cappy, we had 4, we call them open races, open stakes races. That means they're not restricted to New Mexico bred. They're open to any horses from anywhere, basically. And the Bill Thomas, Harry Henson, Sunland Park Derby, and the Sunland Oaks were all won by local connections. So that's I've never remember that in my 21 years here at Sunland Park. Joel Marr is actually working Wild on Ice, the Sunland Derby winner. He's working the horse here at Sunland Park on Friday, and if he comes out of the work well and keeps improving like he has, they're on to Kentucky as well for the Kentucky Derby. So we had the reverse of this a few years ago where Joel was going to the Oaks and Todd was going to the Derby. This year it's Todd's going to the Oaks and Joel's going to the Derby. Unfortunately, when that happened in 2019, both their horses were injured during workouts or they had some training setbacks and they weren't able to make the race. So I'm hoping that both of them can get to those big races and perform well.
If Joel Marr gets through, Wild on Ice with the workout on Friday and gets to Kentucky, would Kenny Tohill be on the mount, or would he probably go for one of the more veteran jockeys, as that race always seems to attract the best of the best from around the country?
That's a great question, Cappy. That's probably a better question for Joel and his owner, but I talked to Ken in the jocks room the next day after the race, and I told Ken, I go, you're 60 years old and you're an overnight success. And he was laughing, and just a great story for Kenny Tohill. I would think they're going to stay with him, but you never know. That's with Mind That Bird. They switched riders to Calvin Burrell. If there's a rider they like that fits this horse, you can't question that they're the ones that are making the decisions, but you'd like to see a guy like Ken Tohill get a chance to ride in the Kentucky Derby, and kind of a crowning achievement of his career. And very successful jockey over the years, just hasn't had that success on a national scale. And I'm just tickled to pieces that he could get that opportunity.
Dustin Dix is with us. He is the Director of Racetrack Operations as we wrap up the meet at Sunland Park Racetrack and Casino for this past season. Let's talk about the jockey leaders after it was all said and done. Who won the jockey title?
The jockey title on the thoroughbred side was Luis Fuentes, and Luis primarily rides for Todd Fincher, so that makes sense. And Luis had an outstanding meet. Alfredo Juarez was second. Ken Tohill was third. All of them earned over $1 million in purses, so very successful for them, not only in the amount of wins, but the amount of purse money they won. And On the quarter horse side, we actually had a tie between Adrian A. Ramos and Hector Aldrete. They each had 21 wins. So to break the tie, we probably go with the seconds and the amount of purse money. So Adrian A. Ramos would come out on top with that. And Wes Giles was the leading trainer, and MRB Racing was the leading owners on the quarter horse side. And thoroughbred side, Judge Lanier Racing, Tom McKenna and Sandy McKenna, another owner title on the thoroughbred side. And they're probably one of the most successful owners in New Mexico since gaming came about. So they've had success as well. They ran in the they've ran on the national scale, competed in the Preakness, ran second in the Arkansas Derby a few years back with the horse named Conquest Mo Money. So it's great to see these local guys branch out, get better horses, and compete on a national scale, because that's what slot machines was supposed to do to horse racing, was to not only keep it going, but to improve it, improve the quality of horses. And I think we've seen that here, and we've seen that here at Sunland Park with the local people winning those 4 open races on Sunland Derby Day. So very proud of where the industry is going in that aspect.
I'm happy you mentioned the trainer title in the quarter horse division. We talked so much about what we saw this year in the thoroughbred ranks from Todd Fincher. We didn't really go into depth on the quarter horse side. Was it a close race for the trainer title, or was it as dominant as what Todd did?
It was pretty dominant with Wes Giles. He had 19 wins, and the second place trainer, Eric Valenzuela, had 12. And Wes Giles also won our West Texas Futurity with KS Little. Deuce Coupe won a lot of our big major races as well. Wes won over $700,000 in purse money, and he's one of the most successful quarter horse trainers here over the years. So this year we did something a little different, that we separated our thoroughbreds and quarter horses to separate days. And I think that worked pretty well. There's some federal legislation called HISA that kind of was a reason for this as well, because we're under federal legislation on the thoroughbred side, and quarter horse we're under the state. So it was good to split that out and to separate those days. And I think our fans, once they caught on, they enjoyed it as well. So right now we're just trying to go through the numbers and start our planning for next year and see what we decide to do for next year. It's always the questions, what are you going to do for next year? I don't know. We just completed our meet on Sunday, but there's some things for us to consider and things for Sunland Park to look at in the future. And, we just want to keep improving and keep hitting it out of the park.
Is it easier to pick up the feed when you go either all quarter or all thoroughbred for a day versus having the first 5 or 6 races for one and then moving it into the thoroughbreds, let's just say, for example, for the remainder of the race?
It is, Cappy, and why it is there's some states that aren't allowed to bet quarter horse racing. So it kind of makes it hard for the simulcast coordinators. They have to cross out races. And if there's what we call multi-leg wagers, where there's a pick 3 involving 2 thoroughbreds and a quarter horse race or vice versa, they can't take them. So it cleaned up that as well. There were several reasons for it. That was one of the reasons as well. And it seemed to work better. There's a few, like I said, there's a few states that can't take quarter horse racing by law, and thoroughbreds is much more popular on a national scale. Quarter horse racing's big here in the Southwest, but everyone knows the Kentucky Derby, the All-American Futurity, everyone knows around here. But of course, the Kentucky Derby is part of our society. Everyone knows what the Kentucky Derby is. So thoroughbred racing is a lot more popular nationwide. So usually off track, we do much better on our thoroughbred races than quarter horse.
As far as, well-known trainers from outside the area, I know Steve Asmussen was a big part of this meet. Bob Baffert came in for Sunland Derby weekend. You also had Doug O'Neill back as well during the year. Were you pretty happy with what you had a chance to see from some of the best trainers around the country as they've been a part of the racing here at Sunland?
Yeah, Cappy, that's a great question. A little disappointed on Sunland Derby Day because there's some transportation issues, and I know you're well aware of them. There's a company called Tex Sutton that used to fly horses from locations here to El Paso to Sunland Park, and now it's a little harder for horses to get here because they have to van in. So something we'll try to work on next year, maybe get with some transportation companies to see if there's a way we could offset some of the vanning expense as well. But as funny. I talked to Bob Baffert on Sunland Derby Day, and we have a connection because we both graduated from the racetrack program in Arizona, and we were talking. And Bob actually asked, what days do you guys run? And he's like, well, I might send a string there, and I don't think he was joking. So it was pretty. You never can tell with Bob, but he seemed to be interested in what we're doing, and maybe possibly running more horses here. So to get a Bob Baffert potentially running horses on a full-time basis would be great for our program. But like I said, I'm not sure if he was joking or not. It's hard to tell with Bob sometimes, but he asked some questions that surprised me.
Meanwhile, as far as the meet, it started New Year's Eve, went all the way through to the end of March. Do you like the schedule? 51 dates as part as live racing versus what we've seen was a longer meet in past years?
Yeah, we ran 55 days this year. We started December 30th and went to April 2nd. I'd kind of like to run a few more weeks as the weather gets nicer. I know this time of year we have a lot of winds, and winds are an issue. Sometimes we actually had to cancel races one day this meet because of winds. But I think the Kentucky Derby, I wouldn't want to run later than the Kentucky Derby, but I think I would like to maybe push the meet starting a little later and run a little later because of the weather and horse population, things of that issue. But that's a pretty complicated process that we go through, that it's a puzzle that there's other racetracks in the state and we all have to fit together. So it takes a lot of collaboration with the other racetracks and the racing commission. But my own personal belief is I'd like to start maybe a week or two later and run a week or two longer. I think the number of days is probably good, plus or minus here and there, but I think the 55 days is probably good. And what we've talked about too is maybe even running a thoroughbred meet and then taking 2 weeks off to turn our barn area and then run a quarter horse meet. I've always wanted to try a quarter horse meet in late spring and lead it into Ruidoso because of our demographic here in El Paso. We have high concentration of quarter horse fans, and we could run twilight, run a little longer into the night, with the daylight. So there's some things that I've always wanted to try. Hopefully we could get the opportunity to do it. And it's exciting. It's exciting that with our management team that they don't have a lot of racing background, that they're willing to try some of these outside the box ideas. So we'll see what happens.
Especially like a 7 or 8 week, quarter horse meet that could then go right into that Memorial Day weekend in Ruidoso, where you could essentially just transfer from one right to the other.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Maybe not that many weeks, but something maybe into like middle of May or third week of May, and then up to Ruidoso for Memorial Day. Right now, we have a little gap between when we were over, when Ruidoso's barn area opens. So we kept our track open for training this week to try to accommodate the horsemen. I'd like to shorten that gap, or even, like I said, go a quarter horse meet and see what we could do. I think a Friday, Saturday, Sunday running at 2:30, 3 o'clock, going to 7:30 we would expose horse racing to a lot of people that can't get off, because they're working or whatever. And I think it'd be a great thing for people to do, we don't have lights, so we could go probably to 7:30 as there's more daylight. And I think that's a pretty cool idea. It's something cool for people to maybe come out and go see, get off of work at 5 and come out and have a few beers and watch the last 4 or 5 races at Sunland Park. That's how I think live racing is how we cultivate our fans, that they get exposed to the live racing, then they come for simulcasting or they come for more live days. And the cool thing I saw this year too, Cappy, is I saw a lot of new people that I've never seen before, a lot of families, a lot of young people. And, we've been here since 1959, and it's great seeing the second, third, fourth generations of, families, because we're such a tight-knit community, and horse racing is such a great sport for families to come out and watch. So that's one of the positives I've seen, is just a lot of families and a lot of new people here this racing season.
I love the idea of happy hour at the track. I love all the new people you're getting. That's terrific. Introducing it. That's what it's all about. And
did you say Cappy hour or happy hour?
Happy hour.
Okay.
Happy hour. Now if I host it, it's Cappy Hour. But
Happy hour is something totally different. I don't know if we can afford that type of promotion.
I don't think you can. I honestly don't. I would. That's in my fantasy world. That's exactly what it's like. Hey, great job as always. Appreciate you and Eric coming on with us every week throughout the season. Have a terrific off season, and before you know it, it'll be December, and we'll be cranking it up again with you.
Oh, and it goes quick. And like I said, people look out Kentucky Derby Day, and hopefully they'll see some. Even this weekend, you're going to see a couple Sunland Derby horses running in the Santa Anita Derby. So you'll get to see some horses that ran on Sunland Derby Day go out around the country, and hopefully they run well.
Terrific. Dustin, appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you, Cappy. And thanks to all the racing fans as well.